welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. This is Jessica. I am your host. I am here with the author, Juliano, for the second time. The first time was Dead 11, which was great and wild and fun. And now we're here to talk about 13 Months Haunted, which is all of those things as well. First of all, welcome back.
Thank you, Jessica. It's so nice to speak with you again.
It's nice to speak with you again, too. And man, this was such a fun book also. And I think like you've got a really good, I don't want to call it a formula, but you do a really good job of tapping into things that we hadn't thought about for a really long time and making them just really good set dressing for your stories. So tell us a little bit about 13 Months Haunted, what the story is about in your words, and kind of how the idea came to you.
For sure. So 13 Months Haunted is about a recent college graduate named Piper, and she decides to basically move to a small town in northern Wisconsin. She doesn't really know what she wants to do with her life yet. So she starts working in a library and being a liaison with a local middle school. And then she meets an eighth grader named Avery. And Avery is also new in town. And the rumors about Avery, which Piper can't ignore, are that her family was killed in a haunted house before they moved there. And Avery's mom is always with her. The kid is never alone, like not for a single moment. And Piper just becomes intrigued, wants to help this girl, and then things kind of go off the rails.
It was definitely fun, and it brought me to just sort of that strange memory of having, I was, I can't remember, I'm trying to remember how old I was during Y2K, but it was such a weird transitional time in technology for everybody. You talk a lot in the book, or you mention a lot the AOL hours, which for those who were not around that time, or may have heard their folks talk about the olden days. So there was a time when like being online meant you had to have a specific platform. So AOL was the big one. I think there was like something called Prodigy beforehand.
Yes, that's right, Prodigy.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But what would happen would be for AOL, you would need to have hours, and they would send you these. First it was discs, and then it was CDs with like 500 hours of AOL, and then you'd pay after that. And of course, everything was through dial-up. Completely different world from us who get very upset when our Wi-Fi is not working. But yeah, but aside from this being sort of this weird time where some people were transitioning from that to a completely different world where, you had like Google and people would use other sources of connection. There was also Y2K, which was, I hate to call it like a mass urban legend, but in a way it kind of was.
Yeah, like it was a big deal. Like for those of us that lived through it, I mean, it was constantly on the news, in the papers, and when New Year's Eve 99 happened, there was a lot of like, oh boy, like I wonder what's gonna happen here. Like I don't necessarily think everyone thought planes were gonna drop out of the skies, but I think people thought that like something might happen.
Aside from the fact that we were literally changing millennium, the idea was, well, computers were not programmed to progress to 2000, so that it's going to think that it's 1900 and everything is going to just go haywire. Funny for me, I slept at a friend's house that morning, and she lived in this property on her parents' property where like she had a cat door and it was in the woods, and raccoons came into the apartment that morning, the little shed that morning, and like she was chasing them out with a broom. That was my Y2K
That's a
wake up
very
call.
exciting New Year's Eve.
Right? Far more exciting than, but that was far more exciting than what actually happened, which was really, okay. Everybody went to work the next day.
Yeah, like life went on. And I really should read more about it. Like I read recently that, we look back at it now and we're like, oh, nothing happened. Well, it's like, well, nothing happened because people that knew what they were doing went in and fixed everything.
They
And
prepare, I mean, they really
yeah, they
prepared
had to go
for
in and be
it.
like, okay, we can't let everything reset to 1900. So there was a lot of work done behind the scenes, I think, to make sure that this did not happen.
That sounds like a whole other book altogether, by
Doesn't
the
it?
way.
Like a
But
race against time,
yeah, right. But I
got
do
that
want to know
you've
why
got that
you,
built-in ticking clock like right there.
for sure, absolutely. But I do want to know why you chose that particular time period for Piper and Avery's story.
That's a really good question. I so yes, the story takes place. There is a wraparound element to the novel, but the bulk of the novel takes place in 1999 and the year 2000. And once I had decided that the book was going to contain a technology component, it's really challenging to do technology plots and whatnot in horror, at least today, because a lot of horror comes from like isolation and like being alone and being unconnected. But I knew I still wanted to have a tech component. So I'm always kind of going back through my memory, and I am one of those people. I graduated from high school in 1999. So I was like, I grew up, I'm one of those geriatric millennials where I could remember what it was like when there was like no internet, but then it kind of being introduced into our lives and it being this strange kind of like novel thing where you're connected but you're not connected. You have to choose to be connected. And then I thought, well, like I've always liked stories where, something happened in the past, then you have to deal with it in the present. So once I had like my wraparound story in mind, and I'm like, I think it would be a fun era to go back to that like emerging internet era and how people responded to using it for the first time, who had it, who didn't have it, and even like the early inklings of like social media, because there was no Facebook, there was no Twitter and whatnot. So I incorporated basically a version of what is LiveJournal into the book, kind of like these early ways of how people would blog online and how they would communicate with the world. And it was interesting, like as I wrote it and as I did a lot of research, I kind of realized that like obviously it's different than it was 25 years ago right now, but a lot of the elements are like still they're kind of there. Like they are kind of still the same as far as like what you were actively trying to do online, and everything's just kind of blown up now. But I just thought it would be a really fun for millennial like me to kind of go back to. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, very much so. And you get the perspective of mostly Piper and mostly Avery. Piper really is intrigued by the fact that Avery seems very alone and she's very interested in things, but, like her mother is so protective. Like she can't be near a computer without her mother, for instance.
Right.
But it, the, there's like bullying and other things, and she just sort of connects with this girl. And just to kind of go back to what you said about isolation, I think that they both are isolated in their way, but for different reasons.
Yeah, like isolation really was the core concept of the idea for 13 Months Haunted was about isolation and exploring what it's like to be isolated. And the idea for the book came from, oddly enough, it was John Carpenter's Halloween, so from 1978. There is a scene in that movie, spoilers, for a 40-year-old movie, 50-year-old nearly. But basically, Jamie Lee Curtis is trying to escape Michael Myers. He had just like escaped this house. He's coming after her, and she runs out into the street, and she's just desperate. She's panicked, and she's just screaming like, "Help me! Somebody help me!" She's all alone, and she's just banging on doors in the neighborhood, being like, "Will someone please help me?" And a light turns on, then it turns off. But like her mindset there is, I'm alone, I'm in danger, but if someone is with me, I will be fine. Was kind of like where her head was at. And that's really such a scary part of the movie to me. And even like in general, I think in the horror genre, typically it's if you're with people, then everything's going to be okay. So I kind of drilled into that and tried to literalize the concept of what if you can't be alone? Like what if being alone would potentially cause you to die? So that's kind of like where the book that's where the idea sparked from.
Man, that is actually pretty interesting to think about. And I don't want to spoil why that is significant, because it's kind of a whole part of the mystery.
It is.
Piper is trying to figure out, okay, yes, it's true. Avery's sister died, and
Mhm.
then her father died, and there's all of these rumors as to why. And also, there are just some things, Avery doesn't react, quote unquote, normally to certain things either. Yeah,
Avery seems a little disturbed in the book, like disturbed by something from her past, and Piper knows that it feels like something happened here, and unfortunately the poor kid is just getting worse, and you do find out why later on without spoiling anything. There are answers, there are reasons why everything is happening.
I'm curious about also just your media research and how much you had to, like, how deep you dove into it. I mean, there was so much between obviously just like certain songs and certain artists that, either we still know or I'm just like, oh, right, that was a song that people listened to back then. But also things like you really just kind of mentioned like things like Roller Coaster Tycoon, which was huge during that time period. And like you said, you set up your de facto blog, but you talk also about horror movies around then. And it was actually a really good time for horror movies, by the way, because everything was really still riding that high that we got from Scream, that
Yes.
really just kind of revitalized the slasher film, yes, but
Hmm.
also just horror movies in general. So it came around to something like the Blair Witch Project, which was this was intentional sort of media project hoax that was really popular during that time. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, I would love to talk about that. I was at that seminal age in like 1999. I turned 18 that year, and I was big into movies, big into horror. Like you said, Scream totally revitalized the horror genre in 96. Then you had I Know What You Did Last Summer, which I think for my money is a great movie. And then in 99 you had a Blair Witch. And so like things like really, really kind of picked up. And for those in the know about the Blair Witch Project stuff, in the early days of the internet, there still was this like general vibe of, oh, I read it online, so it's true. So like when the Blair Witch Project came out, they did that whole thing for probably at least a year where they had the website and they acted like that these kids were actually dead and they were listed dead on their IMDb page and all of these like investigation photos and all this stuff and they kind of played it that the movie was real and then when the movie came out, a lot of people did think it was real. Like one of my good friends, he saw the movie in 99 and he admitted to me, like he told me, he's like, I thought it was real when I saw it. I think there's more people than you think went to see that movie thinking it was real. So like it was such a neat time for the internet. It was a neat time for horror. And like in the book, Avery is a horror fan. Like she is a fan of spooky things. And she's into the Blair Witch Project. She's into like a few other things. And then I realized, oh, like that kind of can play into the themes of the story as far as digging up stuff online and wondering if it's true and like wondering if it's not true and how you go online as you're researching all of these like weird spooky things in like the late 90s. And once that all kind of came together, that kind of solidified Avery's character as I was working on her, and that was one of the final pieces of her character that really kind of brought the whole story together is like this kid being into stuff like that because it was that era where that stuff was huge. So it would make sense that a girl who was into computers, into horror, into tech, all that stuff combines and it kind of plays a role in her predicament.
What about Piper? Where did her development begin?
Yeah, like Piper was interesting. I needed Piper to be kind of like the every person. Like I needed Piper to kind of be the reader surrogate, where you're coming in with not a lot of knowledge of this stuff, and also being like an internet user, but also being pretty brand new to this world of like putting yourself out there online. Like I needed someone who wasn't in the know. So when she's beginning this journey of, hey, I'm going to start using a weblog to kind of let people know what's going on in my life. Like nowadays, this is the most normal thing in the world, but like back then it was like, what is this? Like who is reading this? Like why am I doing this? What am I doing? And like in my research, the most interesting thing that I found was using the internet Wayback Machine. So using the archive, like LiveJournal is still there, and you can read all of these people's live journals. And it felt very intrusive. Like as I was researching to try to get like, okay, how do people write on this? What does it look like? How do people comment? And like I felt I was peeking behind a curtain that I shouldn't peek behind. It felt like I was like looking at someone's diary. Like they are all there. And I was a little unsettled by that.
It's interesting because when I was in library school, I did do a paper on how valuable live journal and blogs are going to be for future researchers about day-to-day life of people. So,
That's
like,
fascinating.
yeah, I think my theory at the time when I thought I was being super clever was something to the effect of it's like modern day cave drawings, like
Ooh, I like that.
you leave it
I like
out
that.
there and you don't realize that one day people are
It
going to
might
be
be
like,
there for, yeah, tens of thousands of years.
so and so went to see, Christina Aguilera in concert and then saw her ex-boyfriend. I mean, like nobody plans, I don't think that with that in mind. But it's interesting because LiveJournal did grow into a lot of other things. And also believe it or not, I know several people who have good friends that they met on LiveJournal and they're still close friends.
Very cool.
If there wasn't LiveJournal, apparently there'd be no archive of our own. So, things evolve, but it is really interesting that that's what you did. You must have like spent lots of nights awake, like, wait, what?
I was reading some things, and I'm just like, oh, like, I hope you're okay. Like, I hope you got over this one breakup that you're talking about here.
Yeah, that's the thing that everybody thinks about with LiveJournal is people talking about their breakups and their exes, right?
Yeah, like I read a lot of that, but just a lot of also just like really normal stuff like, oh, I have a chem test this afternoon, like wish me luck. And it's just like it just kind of it was a lot of them are similar almost like to the AOL instant messenger status update. Some of them obviously got like way longer, but it was basically the equivalent of like an Instagram post now, but instead of a picture, it was words. It was I'm expressing myself. Here's what I'm up to. If you're interested, comment. It was all
Yeah,
there.
no.
Like it was all there. Like we didn't know what it really was or meant yet, but it was all there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, it was a really good mood setter. And just, I mentioned, just like the time period. It's a good story. The time period is vital to the story. However, it also works very well as set dressing. It just drops you in as like almost like an immersive experience where you are behind Piper's eyes, and you are, meeting with the teacher, and you're meeting with Avery's parents and doing a little investigating. I really like it. And then kind of going back to the whole idea of the Blair Witch Project, because I thought of this while I was reading your book. And then, while I'm kind of rehashing in my mind how I felt when I was dropped into Piper's place, the Blair Witch Project makes me think a lot of alternate reality games that
Mm,
sort of came about the internet, I think in like the mid to late aughts, beginning of like Lonely Girl 16, I think was one of them,
yes.
where it's like somebody drops a bunch of information into technology, it starts to become, I guess, viral, and whoever's planning this whole thing out has it so that they're like, if you look in certain places, you're going to find things that are going to lead you back to this story, and people believe, oh, believe that this is real. And I believe that now, thinking about it, really the Blair Witch Project, I feel like, was a precursor to that. And while I was reading the book, I had that same chill to being dropped into those narratives myself.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool that you're saying that. Yes, like 13 Months Haunted with like the 1999 to 2000 tech, like as I was writing it, I one of my biggest realizations was like, oh, like this is the setting. In Dead 11, it was like Clifford Island. In 13 Months Haunted, like the setting is almost the technology, and it kind of cocoons you into this late 90s, early 2000s. And I know part of it is because, I turned 18 in 99. I was in college. Like all that stuff it's still very clear to me. Like I still remember my friend playing Roller Coaster Tycoon on my roommate's computer, like all night long, and my roommate being like, "Will you please get off my computer? Like you have to stop playing Roller Coaster Tycoon."
I just
like
remember my brother building these roller coasters that had no like end. And by that I mean like the tracks would just go off into nowhere and the roller coaster would crash and
the roller
burn.
coaster crashes, all of your guests die, then you lose a lot of money, and then you have to like recoup it because your attendance goes down. Like I was just looking at it recently. You can get like the OG game. It's on Nintendo Switch. Like you can get it, like the original one from like the late 90s.
I was
Um,
not made for games like that because I don't like hurting NPCs. I mean, like it was a lot for me to, I don't know, stab the really cute pixelated creatures in the original Legend of Zelda. So I remember my younger brother, he's 10 years younger than me, playing it when it came out. He was like, I think like he was like maybe like 10. And I was like, oh my goodness, you're killing all of those people. And he's like, they're
Leave the
not
NPCs
real,
alone.
chill.
For the record, like when I played, I was very cognizant of making everyone happy and having enough concession stands and making the paths really
Listen, no
nice.
judgment, okay? My brother is not a sociopath, but this is why I'm bad at games that aren't Tetris.
I
But
mean, like
yeah, it
I'm
works
also
very well
like
though
I'm
for your
also
story.
hesitant to play it again. Like my daughter's 8, so like she probably is about that time where I'm like, hey, check this out. This is great. Like I get sucked into stuff like that. It's like I don't have time to be spending 5 hours building roller coasters. As fun as that would be, got other stuff to do, unfortunately.
But yeah, so this was really good. I loved the book. Like I said, I think just atmospherically and narratively, I think this is just, it's basically going to give you that feel of being there and being in that time where things were changing so quickly. Anything more than this really ventures into spoilers, so I am not going to touch it.
Thank
But
you. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Halfway through the book, like it unravels,
yes.
and it's like a freight train to
But
runaway
it is
freight
like a
train.
nice, like, I don't want to call it a slow burn. It's like like almost like a mountain climb. And then you're at the top of the mountain and there's only one way to go, baby, and that's down.
That's down. Yeah, those last couple hundred pages. It is a ride to the bottom.
So what are you working on at the moment?
Working on my third novel, which should hopefully come out in about a year and a half. I hope it's about a high school baseball team, and 20 years after the baseball players graduate, all the members on the team start dying in reverse order of their positions on the field, and they got to figure out what is happening. So it's another supernatural thriller.
And I must mention, you have a baseball in your hand. Are you researching at the moment?
Yeah, I've been researching by watching a lot of Cubs games, which is great. And yes, this is my writing baseball. If I'm like thinking about something, I kind of just pick it up and start like tossing it around, and now it's like my new fidget.
I love it. Thank you so, so much for chatting with me. Check out 13 Months Haunted. I think you're all gonna love it. And yeah, Jimmy Giuliano, have a great, great day.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you so much.
We are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.